Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the unifying riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Trudeau is once again using his favorite political tactic, accusation in the mirror. Trudeau said Canada risks becoming a toxic, polarized country when it's Trudeau himself who is toxic and polarizing. This was in response to the finance minister being accosted in Alberta. The behavior of the individual who accosted the Liberal Party leader in waiting was unacceptable, just as it was unacceptable for Trudeau to call Canadians hesitant to take the COVID shots a bunch of women-hating racists, just as it was as unacceptable for the Trudeau Liberals to call Canadians protesting mandates rapists and terrorists. The man who screamed at the finance minister posted the video to his social media for the clout, just like Prime Minister Trudeau does to win votes. Meanwhile, the RCMP announced they were investigating the person who yelled at the finance minister. Calling somebody a traitor is not a crime. Fomenting hate and violence is a crime. When Trudeau called a class of Canadians racists, he was fomenting hate. Is it any surprise the Toronto Star would then run a front page calling for the deaths of the unvaccinated? Why is the RCMP not investigating Trudeau for hate speech? Maybe the RCMP is too busy running political cover for the Liberals' confiscation of legally owned firearms to actually do its job. When the RCMP commissioner was testifying at the Nova Scotia Mass Casualty Commission, she dismissed concerns over political interference. Now, if Canadians are losing trust in institutions like the RCMP, it's not because the opposition is pointing out political interference. It's because of Trudeau's political interference. Under Trudeau's brand of toxic progressivism, hate crimes are up. Support for immigration is down, and our country's never been more divided. Canada is a wonderfully diverse, multicultural nation stretched across a continent. Keeping Canada united is the number one job of a prime minister. Our diversity as a country is both our greatest strength in a global economy, but it's also our greatest weakness. Rather than unite people, Trudeau's toxic progressivism divides people by race and gender. It pits them against one another. It labels comfortable, wealthy, university-educated cities as victims of oppression, then brands the out-of-work truck drivers as the oppressors. Trudeau's toxic progressivism is fueled by a legacy media reduced to clickbait journalism. And Canadians are tired of the fear-mongering and division. They're tired of Trudeau and his toxic politics. That's why thousands of Canadians are turning out to political rallies. They want to hear a positive vision, which treats every person as a unique individual and as an individual person. Regardless of religion, race, or creed, everyone seeks the freedom in their lives to live the way they want to. When Parliament returns, my Conservative colleagues and I will continue to hold Trudeau accountable for his toxic behavior, and the NDP will prop him up. But eventually, his government will be defeated, and Trudeau will be sent packing. But until that day, we must remain positive and certain that freedom will prevail. Last weekend, the CBC conducted an interview with Adrian Monk, Managing Director of the World Economic Forum. My colleague, Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner, called the interview the most tone-deaf interview she's ever read. In a tweet thread, she wrote, quote, "The World Economic Forum has never taken responsibility for putting out the objectively bonkers Great Reset policy during the onset of COVID, when the world was in a panic, particularly after Klaus Schwab made the boneheaded decision to brag that he had infiltrated cabinets, end quote. The CBC reporter never asked about Klaus Schwab's comment that he'd infiltrated cabinets. The CBC even frames socialist criticism of the World Economic Forum as being legitimate, but conservative criticisms are framed as being rooted in Russian disinformation campaigns. This is just one example of the legacy media pathetically trying to tie Canadian conservatives to Russian trolls. The real reason the interview was so tone-deaf is that both the CBC and the World Economic Forum are embedded in systemic elitism. Now, systemic elitism works the same way as systemic racism. The institutions are designed to advance the interests of the elites who run them. The World Economic Forum actually brags about being a forum for executives from government, civil society, and multinational corporations to come together and share ideas. Just as the forum is composed of international elites, the CBC is filled with people who share the same educational backgrounds and the same social and economic status. CBC reporters may not be attending international galas on private jets, but they can't help but replicate the concerns of the university-educated urbanites in their reporting. This is just what the elite stream media do. At one point in the interview, the World Economic Forum managing editor openly admits that the Great Reset was a policy paper issued in response to the pandemic. He said the Great Reset plan called on governments to use the pandemic as cover to spend on climate policies. The fact that he could state that openly in an interview with the CBC, expecting no pushback and receiving none, is systemic elitism. I'd like to ask the man from the World Economic Forum to reflect on his comments. Maybe some brave CBC reporter could go to a long-term care home and ask the residents if they would have supported the money borrowed to combat the pandemic being spent fighting climate change instead. Maybe they could ask the waitress who had to subsist on CERB money if that money would have been better spent on windmills. As I've said before, there's no secret conspiracy. The agenda is not being hidden. It's in plain sight, and they'll happily admit to it in interviews. It doesn't matter if it's a pandemic, climate change, or war in Europe. The radicalized far left will see any crisis as an opportunity to expand the state in their own interests. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.